everybody. I'm Peter, the bass player for intergalactic pop star Dasha Sigweed. He named his dog Woof Huff Tarkin. It's Mike.
It's true. Together we are Rebels, the podcast where we explore the Star Wars expanded universe through a deep dive on the animated series Star Wars Rebels.
Our guest is an award-winning podcaster, host of Steel Wars from LA by way of Melbourne, Australia. It's Steele Saunders. How you doing?
Hey, you guys. I'm excited to talk. You picked a good episode of Rebels for me to, or an episode that suits my my needs out of an animated Star Wars cartoon. So I was very pleasantly surprised to get this one. I'd forgotten, like I had no idea what happened. I was like, what happens in that one? And
yeah, good
stuff happens. This is a good ep.
Nice.
Yeah, it's funny watching these back after so many years and be like, oh, totally forgot about that. But before we get started, please subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast app and leave us a review on iTunes. It helps a ton. So we've heard. You can also find us on Instagram or Facebook at Rebels Pod, or email us at rebelsrebelspod@gmail.com.
Mike, you ready?
I'm ready. Steele, are you ready to get into this ep?
I am ready. It's all about family. Let's learn a lesson.
Ooh.
Uh-huh.
Season 1, Episode 12, Call to Action. As public awareness increases around rebel activity, they target an important Imperial network. So, the first scene, this is really interesting to me. Tarkin, well, we don't know it's Tarkin yet, but Tarkin arrives, and this scene mirrors the first scene in the series, as if you remember, like the Star Destroyer going over the city, but it also mirrors Return of the Jedi, with the Imperial March and the shuttle and all the lined up troops. And Chris Voy and Joel Aaron, who work on the show, said that was their inspiration.
Yeah, and I'm super curious to see what you guys think about this, but anytime like a director or a creator or a writer does something that mirrors another piece of art or work, I feel like I often am like, oh, there's going to be some thematic connection, or there's going to be a tie-in or correlation. Like they're doing this, they're doing this like for a reason. But I actually for this episode couldn't figure out the reason why they were doing such a like reflective recreation.
Yeah, I think you're looking too deep into it.
Okay, yeah, it's a kid show. Okay.
No, not even. And like sometimes it does, they are trying to say something, but I just think it's like, hey, let's bootleg that sweet scene from Return of the Jedi,
sure.
Put on the same music and show that these Imperial arrivals of a dignitary, they happen more than once. It's a sweet callback, and quite often, I don't know, like that sort of ode to the movies rather than the forced connection to the movies. Do you know what I mean? This is just paying homage.
An homage. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I just really like that scene. I don't know if I find that scene in Return of the Jedi very striking.
Yeah.
And so I think it might just end at that, like, oh, that looks cool. Let's put it in our show.
Yeah, and there's also just that thing of here's an animated alternate view of the same scene. Like there's that sort of like, ooh, that's cool, because you're seeing it in animation. So the opening of this, sometimes the connections and the ring theory or whatever gets a little bit on the nose, but this is delightful.
Yeah, for some reason too, I don't know if you two agree, but there's like blue tones because it's kind of like dusk in this, and it really reminded me of the Disney logo. When you're seeing over the city, it kind of looks like the castle shooting fireworks.
Absolutely. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw this. When I saw that, I was like, oh, it looks like, whose castle is that? I don't know, Sleeping Beauty's castle?
Yeah, I think so.
Or like, I don't know. I think it's Sleeping Beauty's castle, but I thought that was so reminiscent of that. So I don't know. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was like, is that
good.
A reference?
I'm not crazy.
Is that referential to Disney's logo? Yeah.
It's also even to further the Return of the Jedi-ness, that Imperial center there it's like a parked Death Star, just half finished, just chilling. So you can, and
it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, if you like with your head with your mind Photoshop out the rest of the city, you know what I mean? It's a shuttle Tidarium going towards a Death Star.
100%. And it's massive because you see a Star Destroyer next to it, and the Star Destroyer is pretty small next to it. So yeah, it totally is like a half Death Star.
Yeah, I wonder if they just all have one manufacturer for all their accoutrements. There is actually something I saw. I didn't put it in the notes, but like the gunner seat, like Zeb is later in the episodes using like these anti-aircraft turret kind of things, and those seats are the same seats that they use in the TIE fighters.
Yep.
And maybe also, they all just shop at IKEA.
And also those turrets, we're getting ahead of ourselves. They look exactly like the turrets from Star Wars Battlefront, the video game. Those like box turrets.
I bet that they got it from Star Wars.
I bet it's referential.
So I really like this scene. Wilhuff Tarkin departs from the shuttle, and he has surprised Minister Maketh Tua with his visit.
Grand Moff Tarkin, I am honored by your visit to Lothal.
My visit is hardly an honor, Minister.
I admit I was surprised to learn you were coming.
And I too have been surprised by what's been happening on your little backwater world.
Because the rebels are proving to be quite effective. Mm-hmm. I also like that he drags everybody. So here's a couple of things he says. So Minister Tua says, "Oh, it's an honor, boys. My visit is hardly an honor. This backwater world, blah, blah, Callus stood idly by." Like, he's just dragging everyone. The Inquisitor's like, "Oh, there's a Jedi," and he's like, "If only we had someone who could deal with Jedi." It's like, it reminded me of that scene. Do you remember that movie, Half Baked, the Dave Chappelle movie? There's that scene where the dude quits the fast food place and he's like, "F you, F you, F you. You're cool, F you." That's what I feel like Tarkin did. He just got off the shuttle. Like, "F you, F you."
That's one of my favorite scenes in all of film history. I'm so glad you just brought that up.
Mm-hmm. One other thing I want to point out is I noticed that, I'm sure it's like some animation thing, like having to do with memory or computers. I don't know how that works, but did you notice that all of the troopers that aren't main characters are standing all the way still? Like, not just like still and kind of breathing or shifting their weight a little bit like military, like they're frozen in time, and it's kind of creepy. It's like they're talking amongst a bunch of mannequins.
Yeah, but isn't that a throwback to Return of the Jedi when they were all matte painted?
Oh. Were the troopers matte painted too?
Yeah, because apparently there was one, I've never seen it. Apparently there's one that had a smiley face painted on. But yeah, if you look at the matte paintings of Return of the Jedi, there's a few real troopers, but the majority of them are just painted.
Oh, I knew the background was matte painting, but I didn't know the troopers. That's really interesting.
That's pretty holiday special. I like that.
Yeah.
The matte painters and stuff, that they ruined real things though. I went to the Grand Canyon and it just looked fake the whole time. I had to keep taking off my sunglasses and like squinting and just trying to see like the realness.
Isn't that funny how so much of so much imagery has ruined reality? And I can totally like resonate with that. I remember standing atop like this cliff overlooking the Bixby Canyon Bridge, and me and my buddy were standing up there like soaking in like this iconic bridge in California, and a guy walks up to us and he goes, is that the background from the Windows 7? I'm like, is that what we've reduced this to? Like backgrounds for computers? Pretty wild.
So sad.
It's super sad.
So as part of his dragging, Wilhuff doubts very much that there are any Jedi. He says all the Jedi are dead and doesn't think that Kanan is a Jedi, so he wants to capture Kanan to prove it. Was this believable to you two? Because I had a little bit of trouble figuring out why he would actually want to capture Kanan instead of just kill him. Was it just to like satisfy his curiosity or to win a bet?
Oh no, doesn't the Emperor want like a fresh Jedi to poke?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, the whole point of the Inquisitors is to hunt down the Jedi. So I wonder if the Inquisitors hunt them down, bring him to the Emperor first, and then if Sheev is like, no, I don't like that one, then they kill him or send him off to jail.
I kind of think it's twofold. I think it's first exactly what Steele said. I think it's like the Emperor wants like a pet turn, but I also think, and this happens later in the episode, Tarkin even says, Will Huff even says that he wants
first name basis. He's so casual.
Well, I mean, did you read
Rebels?
Me and Will Huff are pretty tight. But he says that the Jedi are problematic, not necessarily because of their skill, but because of what they represent and what they stand for.
Yeah, we'll get to that later on. He talks about how they're problematic because it gives hope to the people. I found it very Broom Kid. This was also interesting. So why Lothal as a backdrop? Why is Lothal so important? I think as we go on in the series, we see more and more of the Lothal's importance. And I think this is the first time it was explicitly stated by Will Huff. He said that Tua was tasked to protect Lothal's industrial interests, interests that are vital to the expansion into the Outer Rim. So I guess they're using Lothal as like kind of a base to jump out and conquer all the other parts of the Wild West, if you will.
I mean, not to get too political, but it's their oil interest, right?
Michael Moore over here.
Oh,
So this whole Lothal, what its secret meaning or what its importance, like I guess we're 6 episodes away from it ending. You're sort of stating where you're, so just so people know what we're talking, when we're talking about this, because you'll hear it at a different time. But I just can't see anything that they're going to say that Lothal is going to really excite me that much. And there's a different type of fan that just, like they say, we were mining the metal from the Death Star, and everyone goes, ooh, oh. But I don't know, the connection thing, like that sort of like blank connection, it doesn't help the story for me.
No.
Often it actually takes away, because I'm sort of just like, really?
Yeah.
What a coincidental little galaxy we're living in. But it's, I tell you what I do like though is when Will Huff, I'm going to get casual as well.
Good. Or I should say, good.
When he talks about how he knew the Jedi and how they're dead, and like I love that sort of kind of world building where it's like, what do people know that, like, what do the people experiencing these events know about the Jedi compared to what we know? And sometimes with the expanded universe, particularly in the comics and the animation, I enjoy it the most when it's, you just get that sort of other view of the galaxy sort of thing. Like, like just what does someone in the Empire know about the Jedi? What do they think happened? Like when she said that the governor says, I heard stories, like that sort of stuff I find really intriguing, rather than like, we're getting the ore for the TIE interceptor from this one. It's kind of like a generic thing. It's same with like in The Last Jedi, and like I tweeted this thing that it caused a little bit of a ripple, where it was like Luke Skywalker, Rey walks up the stairs, Luke Skywalker goes, oh my God, it's the granddaughter of Ben Kenobi. Like, is the movie better now? Like, do you like the movie more? Like, does that just getting that like that line, does that make the movie better? And for some people it does, because they're connection collectors.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it in those terms. To get back to what you were saying about Lothal, though, I completely agree.
How dare you bring me back on topic?
This is all on topic. It's a symbiote circle.
Okay, no, oh, wow, it's a reference from that movie we watched.
I like references. So just to be safe, I want to avoid spoilers a little bit, but in the new series, they got like pretty trippy mystical with Lothal.
I've seen some
Did you
of
see that?
I don't like it.
I was going to say, I'm really excited to see, because that gives me hope that it's not just, oh, this is where Kanan was born and that's the big reveal, or, oh, this is the ore for the Death Star. Like, I think it could take it to some really weird, trippy places.
Yeah, I guess it's like, I know I've already said this, but like a story that's worth telling is like a story that kind of like is above coincidence. It's like, yeah, it's like not just, it's like a good story has coincidence in it, right? But like things are getting like too coincidental with Rebels at times, where I'm like, why does Lothal have to have a Jedi temple on it, or all these connections? It's just like, it's at times it's starting, and I love this show, but at times it's starting to feel like a Jane Austen novel. Like, oh, everyone is related, and it's gonna, and I don't know if that references. That's actually a weird reference to make for this.
I totally agree, and I sometimes find the Star Wars Rebels has two crutches. One is connections and cameos that sort of try to make up for, like, or people sort of put ahead of the actual quality of the story. And the second one is
Space Whales.
No, Ralph McQuarrie drew this.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
It's like the fish that Ralph McQuarrie rejected 3 times are just rotting at the back of the Lucasfilm archives.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, I love that Dave Filoni is taking such care, but at the same time, I'm okay with hearing his voice. Like, I trust him as a creative to go for it. And at times I wish he would just do that a little more.
Yeah, and where's the new Macquarie? Do you know what I mean? Where like I see all this like fan output of concept drawings and all that sort of stuff, on Twitter and on Instagram, so much talent, and we're going through the scraps, and it's fine, but it doesn't make the cartoon any better. For like, it's just it's just a tiny bit of sugar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. And sometimes I think they harp on about, oh, this is Macquarie. And it's sort of like, yeah, I just, like when I watched the original Star Wars films, I wasn't going, oh, that's Macquarie. I was just taking it in. And some of the references are fun. Like I can remember they had the troop transport, the old Kanan thing.
Yeah.
That was sort of like an expanded universe Star Wars toy, and they brought that in. And that's like, it's cool, but it's just, they're cool little Easter eggs. It doesn't like, make up for the whole story sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's fun to point them out. And I think it's a balance. Like, I've brought up this a million times, but I love, like, aesthetically, I'm not super into how the lightsabers look in this series, but I love that they took the model from the original one and like replicated the technology digitally, because it's something they care about. Like, I like those touches, but when it's just kind of like, oh, here's like a bunny that Ralph McQuarrie drew, let's throw that in there. Like, it becomes like a drinking game. We point out almost all of those references, and it becomes like, all right, take a shot. This is based on a Ralph McQuarrie sketch. Or it gets even so pedantic to like, oh, the wing has a little symbol on it that was once on a sketch for the Millennium Falcon. It's like, okay, cool, shot.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. They're cool, but like, I just feel like they place too much importance. Like, you know, like when you watch the Rebels Recon and all that sort of stuff, it seems to be like the lead story is these spiders were in a picture that George Lucas didn't like.
and I know you do this with any, and I think I'm being so critical because I love this. I wouldn't be this critical with something I didn't love. I just wouldn't give any thought to it. But it also makes me think, what would I be saying or thinking if this was on the total other side of the spectrum where they were really, really going for completely original, 100% new, really going out there and taking risks, and some of it wasn't working. I don't know. I'm just, this conversation could be on the other side as well, but yeah.
So I'm going to take a left turn because I have some big news. You don't know this yet, Steele, because we haven't officially launched yet, but there's been a thread of mystery going through our podcast when we try to nail down those stupid masked helmets with like the Triforce symbol from Zelda on the front of it, the white ones. We can't figure out what those helmets are for and what those troopers are for, but I figured it out.
Holy crap.
I got a little help on Twitter. So those helmets that we have been constantly wondering about are Imperial combat drivers who are trained to handle anything in the Imperial ground arsenal, including speeder bikes, troop transports, and all types of walkers. So they have a special helmet for people who drive things.
So that's their Class C license, or their Class A license. Like, I can drive anything. Here's my helmet. Yep. Is that what you're telling me?
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. So mystery solved.
That wasn't as exciting as I was.
Anticlimactic.
Yep.
But speaking of speeder bikes, there is a chase where the rebels are being chased throughout town by some of the said troopers. Evidently, they have stolen a crate of supplies, we find out later, and they're pursued by several speeder bikes, and they're led by Commandant Oresco and our friend Taskmaster Grint, which I was really hoping to see Grint on a speeder bike, because I don't know, I'm just fattest, and I think it would be funny to see a fat man on a little speeder bike.
That's mean, given what happened to him at the end of this episode.
Spoilers. And I also like how the Imperials are just blindly firing around town. Like, they just go around a corner and you see like an Ugnaught carrying a fruit the size of his head and just has to duck blaster fire. Like, they don't care.
I want to talk about Ezra's plan that works, but is a weird plan. After the chase ends, like in the chase's climax, Ezra's idea, we know that, and we're told it's his idea, is to have these two speeders like drift out with no one on them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then for the stormtroopers to walk down like an alley and then be shot by Ezra, who's standing up on a roof. That's the plan. Steele, do you have any thoughts about this plan, Ezra's plan?
I don't think it's too well served to go too deep into the military strategy of Star Wars Rebels. I remember
15-year-olds.
There was I don't know. Sometimes it's this weird thing what we're doing because we're watching this cartoon for 12-year-olds or whatever, but it's marketed to adults. Do you know what I mean? Like it's quite confusing. People say, "Oh, it's just a kids." It's, like if you critique it too harshly, people are like, "Oh, it's just a kids show," and it's like, "Well, why are you marketing to me?" Like, if you're having a voice actor cameo from Saw Gerrera, like that's like, and it's the actual actor. You're marketing. You like 10-year-olds don't care. Like that is adult marketing, and even at Celebration, they have like the big room and the press conference and all that sort of stuff. But there was this one scene where this is why I sort of just like, oh, you can't, I don't know, you do your head in trying to think about this stuff. So I think it was on Mandalore and people on jetpacks. This is the start of season 4 and they're shooting and there's like the good guys are on the ground with no cover, and they're huddling, and Ezra's behind them defending the blaster bolts with his lightsaber.
Huh.
And it's like, why standing behind them? Like,
Yeah.
I know just through the happenstance of Star Wars, they're only shooting at him, but you're not protecting the people in front.
You're totally right. I don't think they would be putting, Chopper and references to General Syndulla in Rogue One because they really want that like 10-year-old money coming into the theater, bringing up ticket sales, like, and the books that they market to, the older of us, they feature a lot of the characters from this season. So I think you're absolutely right. They kind of want it both ways. It's a kid show, quote unquote, but they want us to tune into it.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, I think the strategy of all that is quite strange. I did like through the chase though. I did like seeing the Ugnaught for some reason.
Yeah, and I don't know why I was so fascinated by this fruit and the size of it, because the fruit was the size of his head. He was carrying this fruit, and all I could think is like, it must be really cheap to eat as an Ugnaught. Like, you just need to buy one fruit and it'll feed you for a couple days, or like a hot dog will just like, they're set for a week.
Yeah, but you can't get a good paying job, so it all balances out.
The only job you can do is carbonite engineer.
Yeah.
So they're back on the Ghost now, and they see a transmission from Senator Gall Travis, who we are familiar with now, and he proclaims his allegiance to the Empire and throws shade at the Spectres, which includes like a picture of all of the Spectres.
Yeah,
posed really cool. Like, how did he get that picture? How did they get their headshots?
maybe they have a Rebels Facebook group.
Oh my God, that has just come up on my screen. That is, it's
Right?
it's amazingly cropped as well. Like, whoever photoshopped out the background did a really good job.
I wonder if
Oh
they
my
just
God.
have Imperial Photoshoppers or graphic designers. Like, you can be a stormtrooper, or you can also be like a barista at their coffee bar, or you can be.
Yeah, I'd rather design the logo for the helmet than wear one.
Yeah. So this is a good thing if you are, because you told us you're playing the episode on silent while we're talking about it. See if while Kanan is telling Sabine the plan, look over the back of Sabine's shoulder. I'll put this in the show notes when we post this episode. But there's like a poster or some artwork that looks like a weird demented clown in the back of the Ghost that I've never noticed before. And it kind of looks like the type of art that you're like, if you drew that in elementary school, your teacher would call your parents because they thought it was a cry for help. It's really creepy.
Maybe she's into ICP.
Well, actually, so, I mean, it's still really creepy, but I do think I know what it is.
Okay.
So
great setup.
I know, right? I didn't even mean that. So for some reason, this is the first time 12 episodes in that I've noticed how much art is around the Ghost. Like, you'll see that Sabine painted around the doorways and like,
But this is clearly
all this
a poster.
stuff. Yeah. So one of the things that they have, if you translate, you could see it's kind of fuzzy. There's Arabesh there. I don't know what that one specifically says because it's too fuzzy to translate, but I did do some research, and there are multiple music posters hung up around the Ghost, including for a band called Space World, a DJ called DJ Rang Thang, Dasha Sigweed, and Stargazer. There are posters for all those bands around the Ghost, and then also there's rumors of a Max Rebo poster.
I am trying to go to a DJ Rang Thang show because I feel like he might be the equivalent of Earth Cisco.
I like that.
Earth Cisco.
Not just Cisco. But since I say,
Don't like a truck.
Yeah, you never heard the thong song?
What?
Hey mate, I know all about the thong song. Don't worry about that. Don't invite me on your show to think you're gonna school me about the thong song. That is us. That is us at the Mon Calamari the opera in episode 3. Hey, have you ever heard the Cisco thong song?
Have you ever heard the tale of Cisco the thong?
They have beautiful beaches in Australia, so he's well familiar with the thong song.
No, but that's what I was going to say. Thongs in Australia are actually flip flops.
Ooh.
That's way less sexy.
We just call them bikini. So it is one of those weird things when, not that I wear thongs, they disgust me. Flip flops.
I'm wearing one right now.
A man's foot should be covered at all times. And but yeah, when people say, "Oh, I'm going to put my thongs on," and so people get the wrong impression in America because they think they're going to, get a bit casual.
It makes me giggle because I am immature. So during this transmission, Gall Travis is speaking to Alton Castle, who evidently is the Ryan Seacrest of the Empire.
Yeah.
He's the host of the HoloNet, and he was featured predominantly in some viral marketing before this season came out.
He's basically the Caesar Flickerman.
Good pull.
Hunger Games. I had to look that name up right now.
Ha ha! That's my impression of him.
Good job.
And then at the end of the transmission, because Zeb's like, cut it off, I don't want to see it anymore, Castle and Travis are like holding hands very romantically, and I thought it was sweet.
I don't want to make too big a call, but I think as far as covering a hologram holding hands, this is the podcast that goes deep where other people fear too.
Yeah,
that's on my business card.
Wait, they're really holding hands? I kind of don't believe that.
Oh, I've made you talk about it more. This is horrible.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Sorry.
All right, why don't you look that up and I'll keep going with that episode.
I'm looking that up because I think you're full of baloney.
So Kanan thinks that they should do it for real. So his plan is to take over this giant comms tower that's on Lothal and broadcast a message of hope and inspiration. And people think he's crazy.
Podcasting will never take off. What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh, it's the first Star Wars podcast.
No, Kanan, Ezra's mum and dad. They were podcasters.
You're right.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They're big time potties. Coining that.
I like that. So
can you uncoin that phrase?
Yeah, I feel pretty lame about it. Right after I said it, I immediately was like, "Oh, that's not cool." Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, I'm gonna pause real quick because Mike's pulling up the video.
Yeah, they are holding hands. Well, they're shaking hands.
Yeah, but they're shaking hands with like two hands at the same time.
That's just a level of sincerity. I also want to point out that this is at minute 4 of 22. So maybe we should pick it up.
Oh my gosh. So for those of you coming along, 4:29 is where they are holding hands, and I am right. So we are in Tarkin's office, and
this is where the show gets brutal. Let me take over.
Okay, go ahead.
So they're in Tarkin's office, and they call in Taskmaster Grint and Commandant Arisco to basically give them a talk about their performance. It's a performance review.
Yeah.
That's basically what's going on here, and they have not been doing a good job. And so they bring in these two cartoonish characters, tell them they're doing a terrible job, and then the Inquisitor cuts off their head. And in this moment, I was wondering, is this like the writers of the show saying, this isn't your mother's cartoon show anymore? Like,
maybe.
Yeah, well, they were lying to themselves, but it is a remarkably violent scene.
Yeah, it is.
It's
an execution.
It's easy to look over too, but I think the actual physical act of the lightsaber is very interesting to me because he kind of like turns it on so it's sideways and then pushes it like a shopping cart and presumably cuts off both of their heads at the same time. It's just like a heartless, brutal maneuver.
It's good. I like it. I don't know. Like I tweeted this before because I watched this episode, and this is my favorite finale of the 3 finales. I don't know. This sort of to me, made some promises that the show maybe didn't keep down the track. Like it's like all that they're following the cats and the wolves around Lothal. It's just a bit. Is this going to pay off in a way that I care about? But this episode is. I love the less Force centric and more sort of Empire rebellion stuff. It's far more because I don't know. I just all the Force mysticism. I kind of don't really like it getting explained in the cartoon.
Interesting.
Did you watch Clone Wars?
Yes.
How do you feel about all the Force mysticism?
The Mortis arc is my least favorite. I just find it. I just like the green puppet. Tell me about it on the side of the fake swamp. That's good enough.
And I am on the fence about the mysticism thing.
I'm the other side of the spectrum from you, Steele. I really love like the mysticism stuff. So that's why I'm interested about how this Lothal stuff's is that going to pay off at the end of the series, all the mysticism? And I might be really into that, but who knows?
I think you're going to be liking the conclusion of the series more than me. Like I'm sort of a bit like, I think it's going to end in some like, whoa, are they dead or are they not? They're here with us all the time. One of them's a tree and the other one's a fern. One's a bird.
Sounds right up my alley. So we are back. Tarkin says failure will no longer be tolerated after cutting off his underlings' heads, rest in power. And he orders Callus to send out probe droids.
Yeah.
So we are back with the rebels and they are scoping out their target, this comms tower, and they see one of the said probe droids. They're in a little bit of a tight spot because they don't want to be given up. So instead of blasting it out of the sky, Ezra uses the Force because he has learned how to commune with animals.
Which I think is a smart move. I mean, I feel like, there's very few points in Rebels where I'm like, that seems like this seems like a good plan with like some logic in it. And this is one of those points where I'm like, that seems like a good idea. Like, if you can, because they've already demonstrated in this show that Ezra can communicate and so can Kanan with animals through the Force. Yeah, use one of them to like take down this probe droid. That way it looks like it was a natural occurrence rather than like a rebel doing it. Yeah. So good job.
Yeah, I don't mind the premise of it, but it's sort of that, and this is just my take and my sensibility, but Rebels always seems just to push the friendship with me a little bit too far. Like if Ezra had just said, made the Lothcat, run off and make the probe droid go after him. Like, do you know what I mean? Because the probe droid's trying to work out what the Lothcat is, or he did like a herd of them or something. But the whole jumping on top of it and
then it goes like Tom and Jerry.
I just don't believe like a raccoon on meth could take on that thing from the start of Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. No, I don't either.
And it like, I don't know, it's tailored for, this Disney XD audience. And so they seem to do it every episode where it's just like, oh, did you have to push it that far into this dun, 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 sort of, type of mode. So I guess that's one of my gripes about the series is sometimes the lack of restraint.
Yeah, but they slip into Looney Tunes quite a bit.
Yeah. And I always wonder, like, they had this, which obviously I think at its, for the most part, skews lower than the Clone Wars as far as
100%.
Yeah, but then they've got that Lego one as well, the Freemaker Adventures. It's just curious to me. It's like, well, if you've got that Lego one and that's doing this sort of, just out and out it's pretty goofy, fun stuff. Like, why not tighten this one up a little bit? But I don't know. The whole Disney XD thing.
Maybe I'm not remembering this clearly because I'm purposely not rewatching anything except for what we're doing episodes on. But I seem to feel like the tone shifted after the first season. Like they kind of found their legs. I don't know if I'm misremembering that.
I think it did. I think this first season is really clunky to me.
Oh, really? I kind of like it more.
Oh, see, once we get into like second, third, fourth, like the fourth season so far it's been exceptional to me. And
when's he going to tell Kanan that he met Obi-Wan Kenobi? If you meet one of the two remaining Jedi Masters at Nazi, you're not bringing it up? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
That seems important.
There's just things like that where it's just it just does my head in. It's like, how do you get back and not mention, hey, I just saw Darth Maul kill Obi-Wan Kenobi? Nah, he's just gonna say this. I've learned a lesson again, guys. It's all about family. No, tell the family you saw Ben Kenobi kill Obi-Wan Kenobi. I mean,
maybe that's the thing. Maybe he said his name was Ben, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know Ben." He probably wasn't even really a Jedi.
Shut up.
This is a very minor thing, but this is the podcast for minor things. I really like how he tells Callus, like, no, we're going to lay a trap. And Callus kind of like backs out slowly.
That scene was weird.
Like, okay, whatever you want. Don't kill me. Okay, bye.
Well, I'm trying to remember what Callus said, but he even said something weird in response. It was like, oh, okay. And like there was a weird hesitancy.
Well, I think he wanted to just build up, like he was like, we need to defend that comm tower because we can't lose it. And then Wilhelm was like, no, let them think that it's still undefended and we'll spring a trap. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't kill me, please. So the trap is in play. One thing I really like is part of this the plan to take over the comm tower is now in play. And one thing I like about this plan is that they're using computer spikes, which I've been fascinated with ever since Knights of the Old Republic. It was a thing you used to use to hack computers in Knights of the Old Republic, and I never knew exactly how they worked. So I like in this series, you see the physical computer spike. Evidently, it's like a USB drive, but it hacks things.
Yeah.
If it works, we should be able to use this to transmit directly through the tower.
How we doing?
Well, Chopper has a spike. We get him into the tower, and he can upload it right into the computer core from any terminal.
Stop complaining, bolt brain. You have the easy job. What's the range of this spike?
As long as the tower's transmitting, we're good to go. Everyone will hear what we say. Well, anyone who's listening.
I really like that you can physically see how the computer spike works. It's kind of like, have you ever been on a Reddit? Oddly satisfying. The way that this physically goes into the slot, I found very oddly satisfying.
Oh, I think we're going into a part of fandom that I don't want to know about.
All right, move along here. So evidently, as we've noted, as we've said,
love seeing a computer get spiked. Oh, satisfying.
A little weird.
So as we've mentioned, it's a trap. And
that's right, Chopper. Spike it, Chopper. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, I feel very weird now. So the Inquisitor shows up. Callus shows up. A bunch of troops show up. Notably, Tarkin doesn't show up. I like that he's like too good to get his hands dirty.
No, he's not a fighter. We know that.
Yeah, but it's nice. It's a nice character moment. And Kanan covers for them. Yeah. He says he's going to be right behind them. Which, did you notice that the Binary Sunsets theme starts playing when he says he's going to sacrifice himself?
I thought that was rad. I have nothing to really talk about with their whole fight, but I like the lightsaber battle. I think that was done well. I think it was short. I don't think anything crazy like double black backflips are happening. I think it was tastefully done, which I think Rebels does well with lightsaber fights. I think they know how to tastefully do it. And I like that Kanan says, I'll be right behind you. Because if you remember from the comic books, the last thing Dippa Balaba says to Kanan before he dies is, I'll be right behind you. That's literally the last thing she says. I don't know if that's intentional, but
Good catch.
it could be like a trauma moment. Like he just instinctively says that. And then of course,
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Inquisitor,
The only thing I'll say about this lightsaber fight is that the Inquisitor kind of gets knocked back. He goes, "Oh, you've been practicing." And I feel like they did a good job of actually animating that. Like, I think Kanan literally looks like he's better with a lightsaber than he was in the beginning of this series.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a cool touch.
I got to jump to the very last scene, Ezra's speech at the end. I can't help but think it was like a Pinterest inspirational meme. It was lovely. It was a little cheesy. It irked me a bit.
I'm going to do something that this could be the first time ever. I've done a lot of podcasts, you guys, but I don't think I've ever come to Ezra's defense on a podcast before.
Oh, wow.
I think this was Ezra at his best. Like I find him like in season 2 and 3 so annoying with just the way he just ignores just basic common sense and previous episodes. Like he just, are you going to trust Darth Maul again? That sounds like a brilliant idea. And just him learning the lesson of family just so many times. But this was for my sensibilities like pitch perfect.
It appears the insurgents have gained control of the tower's transmitter.
We have been called criminals, but we are not. We are rebels, fighting for the people. Fighting for you. I'm not that old, but I remember a time when things were better on Lothal. Maybe not great, but never like this. See what the Empire has done to your lives, your families, and your freedom? It's only gonna get worse. Unless we stand up and fight back.
It is. It's corny, but sometimes I really like the corny stuff. Han Solo talking about the Force, all that good stuff. But I actually this is my Ezra high point. This is my peak Ezra.
His parents would be proud.
They would be. I'm proud.
Oh,
he's become a real podcaster in this moment.
So that's the end of the episode. There is one last thing we do to give our overall impression of the episode is we do a subjective scale where we pick the worst thing in our opinion about Star Wars and the best thing in our opinion about Star Wars, and then something that lands wherever we think this episode lands. So Mike, would you like to give an example?
Sure. So my scale is on a scale of C-3PO was created by Anakin Skywalker, which is a true low point for me. To the best thing being Luke staring out into the twin sunset on Tatooine while John Williams' Binary Sunset theme plays, and A New Hope, which is the absolute best thing. I would rank this episode as I would rank this episode as the scene in Attack of the Clones where they meet Watto for the second time, and he's wearing that lovely tin hat, and he's
little Annie,
which I don't know how some people feel about it, but I'm okay with it. I kind of like it. It's a little silly, but and that grade translation for me is like a B, like not the best, not the worst, maybe a B minus, B minus. It's endearing, but not 100%.
Nice.
Amazing. Yeah.
So mine is from a scale of Jar Jar Binks being farted on by an Eopie and going, P-Usa. And then the best thing is Luke and Vader's fight at the end of Return of the Jedi. I give this episode Sheev looking at Mace Windu and going, it's treason then. And then doing that crazy spin and that sound effect, which I say is a B plus because I really like that, and it's closer to an A if you didn't know how letters worked. So Steele, what's your scale and grade?
We are remarkably similar in our scale. I was going to say on a scale of people talking about Ezra being the other that Yoda mentions in Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, no, I didn't know that was a thing.
To Luke doing a flip and catching the lightsaber and killing everyone on the skiff. I give this a rating of a pretty decent part of Revenge of the Sith.
Nice.
Which is, that could be the Sheev circle thing.
Nice. So around what letter grade would that be?
Yeah, as far as rating it as Star Wars, I would give it a B-. As far as rating it as a Star Wars Rebels episode, I would give it.
All right.
Nice. So thanks so much. Is there anything, where can the people find you? What would you like to plug?
On all the main social medias, it's at Steel Wars. I'm constantly discussing Star Wars with people on Twitter and posting up cool photos on Instagram, or hopefully cool. And my podcast, Steel Wars, puts out 2 episodes a week. One is normally a sort of an in-depth interview with someone in Star Wars or a Star Wars fan. We've had like actors from the movies and people that work behind the scenes and comic book writers, all that good stuff. And
you're like a journalist.
I'm trying. Thank you. That is quite a compliment.
You've even interviewed Ryan Johnson on the carpet.
Ryan Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy. And you can watch all that stuff on YouTube. I'm doing more stuff probably by the time this is out on YouTube. But I guess we're talking to podcast listeners, so they're already podcast listeners. But and then the second episode we do every week is like a call-in show. So we go through the week's news, and people can Skype or call in, like Talkback Radio, and ask questions or throw in their opinion and stuff. And we have like special guests from the podcast come on and do that. And it's super fun. It's a really sort of, I guess in Star Wars podcasting, a different sort of format. And it's fun because you never know what you're going to talk about, and you're sort of talking about what the people want to talk about, which is really cool. And we have like creators and actors, and Stephen Stanton always seems to call in every couple of weeks, which is really fun, and does a character, which is always a treat. But thanks so much for having us. It was awesome fun. And
thank you so much.
If you have a spare episode later on, I'm more than happy to hear about your weird computer spiking fetishes one more time.
Oh man, I feel dirty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna hope to do more seasons, so we'll definitely hit you up. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you making the time.
You gotta do more seasons. It's only 4.
We will. We'll do them all. We're gonna be doing them all.
Yeah. You hear that?
What is that?
I'm trying to make it sound like a bell, but it's a coffee cup.
Yeah, it sounds like a coffee cup.
But pretend it's a bell because it's the school bell and class is in session. You like that? This is the third and final, for now, deep dive into the origins of the Force and the Force in general.
Okay.
So if we're going to talk about the origins of the Force, there's only one place we can really talk about that place. It's called Mortis.
Oh.
So if you're not familiar with Mortis, it was first introduced in the Clone Wars, where Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka were tricked into visiting a place named Mortis that was inhabited by 3 incredibly powerful beings.
Yeah.
They were identified by the father, daughter, and the son. Do you like my spooky voice?
Didn't sound any different.
This place, Mortis, it took many forms and was incredibly hard to find. Some thinking it existed outside the known universe and even outside of time and space itself. While on Mortis, Qui-Gon Jinn appeared to Obi-Wan. This is the only time, as we mentioned before, he never mastered being able to take a corporeal form, except for on Mortis. He was able to become a Force ghost on Mortis. And he appeared to Obi-Wan and he said, quote, Mortis was a conduit through which the entire force of the universe flows. So in a previous deep dive, we talked about Yoda's quest to learn how to become a Force ghost, and his quest led him to a mysterious planet inhabited by a bunch of Force priestesses. Some think that planet is the wellspring of life, which is powerful in the Force. So powerful that it may actually be where the Force originates. So I like to think about it from what Qui-Gon said, that the Force originates in the wellspring of life and then it flows through Mortis. He says it's a conduit, so it's kind of
it's like the island on Lost.
Ooh, good pull. That is exactly what it's like. And so we don't really know what the exact function of these conduits are, these locations that act as like Force sewers, for lack of a better word. But they have popped up from time to time in many different forms. So we have seen I'm not going to spoil it, but it seems like we saw Mortis in season 4 and it appeared much different than we saw it in a different way and had a much different function. But it might not have been Mortis either, because there are other locations that have eerie similarities to Mortis. So maybe it's not quite unique. What I do want to talk about on Mortis is Anakin's trials while on that quote unquote planet. So when he arrives, Obi-Wan says he feels an intersection of the light and dark that he has never felt before. That is because the person we know as the daughter represented in a very real way the living embodiment of the light side of the Force, and the son represented the living embodiment of the dark side of the Force. And the father ruled them both, representing the balance between the two. So he was the only being powerful enough to be able to control both his daughter and his son and make sure that neither of them gets out and wreaks havoc. But it turns out the father is dying. So he brought Anakin there because he heard on the grapevine that Anakin might be the chosen one. So he decided to give Anakin a test. And I won't go into details of exactly what the test was, but it turns out that Anakin is in fact powerful enough to dominate both the son and the daughter at the same time, so he must be the chosen one. As such, he asks Anakin to fulfill his destiny and become the new father and stay on Mortis to keep balance within the Force. As you can probably guess, he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So he turned his back on his destiny as the chosen one. So that's a little bit of the mysticism. It's kind of like this weird, I think you brought it up. You said kind of like Greek mythology kind of origin of the Force. And I always thought, the chosen one was more of a philosophical kind of thing, but this was interesting to me because it was kind of a very real representation of Anakin's duty as the chosen one.
Yeah.
Like he has to stay in this place and do some stuff.
I know. It's almost like it's this episode in the Clone Wars presents like a problem to like the prophecy, because it's like, were the Jedi misinterpreting the prophecy? Was he the chosen one to stay on Mortis?
Yeah,
that's how he was bringing balance. Because something you didn't mention, I'll quickly say, is that the father, the son, and the daughter all die at the end of this episode in Clone Wars, and so they stop existing.
Yeah. So I think that's another really interesting philosophical.
So there's no harmony at all.
Yeah. So, or did he bring balance by killing them? We don't know. So I think we look at this, there's always this question, like, did Anakin fulfill the prophecy when he killed all the Jedi? Because now there are not a lot of Jedi and not a lot of Sith, so they're balanced. Did he fulfill the prophecy when he threw the Emperor off of the ledge and, let the good guys win? Or was the prophecy like literally to stay in this planet and make sure these two people didn't get out?
Yeah. I mean, it's so lost. I can't help. It's like so lost, like the Man in Black, and like,
oh yeah.
I mean, controlling these two, like keeping them where they are, which is interesting.
Was there a light side toward the end of Lost? I don't remember.
There's like a light side and the dark side, like always battling.
Oh yeah.
And there was one person kind of keeping them at bay.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know if are you gonna bring up season 4 of Rebels briefly?
I don't want to. I think let's keep that all.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil anything we haven't talked about on this show yet.
Do you know where I was going though?
I think so.
With the daughter, the son, and the father.
I mean,
they were. This isn't a spoiler. All I'm going to say is there's a mural of them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why it indicates that whatever had to do with that mural in season 4 that came out, that some people think that is Mortis, just in a different form. Because it evidently had something to do with these 3 figures that were important to the Force in one way or another. It's still unclear exactly what their origins are or anything like that, but I think it's an interesting conversation. Another thing I liked is why I was asking about the light side was I like this idea that balance doesn't just mean, all light side. Let's all be good and peaceful to everyone, because they were just as worried for the daughter to get out as the son. They didn't want the light side to wreak havoc across the universe either. Maybe because of, there is no darkness without light and vice versa.
I mean, it's Taoist. I think I keep saying it, but you can't light a candle without casting a shadow.
Totally. So I like that. While we're on the subject though, I mentioned other locations. It's been brought up that Ahch-To actually has some similarities between Mortis and Ahch-To. And to a lesser extent, Dagobah has a couple things like this. So there is a theory. I didn't really read it anywhere. Maybe I made this theory up. It's my theory and it's completely wrong. But that there are lots of these different planets or locations that are a conduit for the Force. So if you read the Last Jedi Visual Dictionary, which I've mentioned before, and it's super cool, they say that Ahch-To is, quote, Force infused. The same as Dagobah and Mortis. So those were mentioned in relation to The Last Jedi. I also mentioned before that there was a depiction, like a mural, another kind of like Taoist thing is like yin and yang of the Prime Jedi on Ahch-To. And it shows the Prime Jedi sitting between the light side and the dark side in a state of balance, which is very physically manifested on Ahch-To, where the light and the dark both flow in balance on the planet. You see this when like Rey reaches out to feel the Force and she talks about like the darkness and the light living in harmony.
Yeah.
There's also a mural just like that on Mortis and Clone Wars. It looks almost exactly the same. I don't think there's a person sitting there, but it's like the Sith and the Jedi symbol, or is the light side and the dark side symbol kind of combined and then split in half, like showing balance between the light side and the dark. We also see that there is a place where Rey goes to interact directly with the dark side on Ahch-To, which is the same as Dagobah, with that kind of magic tree where the dark side flows through that place.
Yeah, oh, the Cave of Evil.
Yeah. And then another.
You're talking about Rey.
Well, yeah, Rey goes to she goes into that like fountain thing, like underwater. But it's very similar to the Dagobah cave, right?
Yeah.
So the last thing is that on Mortis, the weather seems to swing wildly between like a beautiful, serene, really bright place and like really dangerous, depending on if it's night or day. And they say like you can't stay out at night because the storms are deadly. And if you notice, Ahch-To has similar characteristics. Every time you see Octo at night, it's rainy and it's stormy and it looks pretty dangerous, but during the day, it's like a beautiful, serene, placid place. So I'm really interested to see if any more locations like this pop up, or if they like more clearly dive into this stuff in episode 9. Because this might be a stretch, but I see some pretty interesting parallels between Luke and the daughter, and Kylo Ren and the son, and Rey and the father. So Luke is like the light side embodiment, Kylo Ren is the dark side embodiment, and Rey is the kind of middle ground between them both. So that's complete conjecture. I haven't gotten that anywhere, but I'd be really interested to see if they flesh that out in episode 9.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah. So thanks for sitting through my class, everybody.
No, that's interesting. The more I think about the Force and this kind of mythological side, the more I like it. I think I'm in the minority on that. I think people generally just like the larger spiritual view of it rather than like the mythological view.
Yeah. I like it too.
I like this, and I think we're a pretty small minority.
Yeah. You're a Star Wars apologist. Anything Disney does, if spoon feeds you, you're just going to sup it all up.
Well, I mean, if you think, and I was just doing a little research, there's only 5 episodes in which, 2 of which are in season 4 of Rebels. So there's only 3 Clone Wars episodes where this mythology is really, like fleshed out. And I just feel like these 3 episodes have such like massive implications to the Force. Like they do. Yeah, and totally. People don't recognize it. Like it's like people ignore it, but it's canon. It's the one, George Lucas worked on this. Like, yeah, totally. It's people forget how involved in Clone Wars he was. And it's like, you can't ignore this. This is part of, I don't know. It's like people picking and choosing their canon. It's like, no, canon is, it's very clear what's canon. Yeah. And I don't know. That's a really good point, actually. I don't think a lot of people give credit to, because, a lot of their complaints, especially with what just happened in season 4 of Rebels, is, oh, they're introducing all this stuff. But no, they're expanding on what George Lucas clearly laid out. Yeah. Everything in Clone Wars, even if it wasn't written by him, was run by him. Dave Filoni was very truly his right-hand person. So it's like I don't know. It's like, you have to understand that this is part of the universe. It's like, you can like the Beatles, but you can't say they only wrote 3 albums. Yeah, you know what I mean? That's a good. You can't be like, these are the only albums wrote. Like, no, like if you go to a live show, they're gonna play more than those 3 guys. Like, sorry. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I think that's how I like to look at it. Is that it's all canon. It's all within the Beatles catalog. But you know what? Maybe you hate Octopus Garden. Doesn't mean it's not a Beatles song. Yeah. You don't have to listen to it. That's how I look at it. You don't have to read the books. You don't have to watch the series. You don't have to dive deep into the mythology if you don't like it. It could just all be like pod racers and laser swords if you want, which is totally cool. Yeah, you could go the other way. It's like, if you're going to choose to have, it'd be, it's like, I could just choose to make this just pod races. Like, that's all Star Wars could be to me if I wanted that. Gosh, I hope there's someone who does that. I just die for those pod racing parts. Cool. So thank you for tuning in to this episode of Rebels. Yeah. You know where to find us. Hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Rebels Pod. Or you can email the show at rebelspod@gmail.com if you want us to do a birthday party or come be on your podcast, or speak at a conference, whatever. We can sing a song. Mike has a lovely singing voice. It's a baritone, so I'm gonna need a soprano. Please leave us a review on iTunes, or just like tell your friends, write a letter, whatever you want. And while you're at it, check out our friend Steele Saunders. He did such a good job on this episode. You can check out his show Steel Wars. He has a live call-in show and just a regular show. He does live shows in LA. It's super fun. He just had on Ben Mendelsohn, which is pretty cool. So please check out his stuff. He's a dear. Yeah, and until next time, be brave out there. And don't look back. Don't look back.
Bye-bye.
Bye.